You can work hard, wake up early, write goal lists, repeat affirmations, meditate every day. But if the way you observe your life stays the same, nothing will truly change. That's the truth almost no one wants to hear. Because it's easier to search for external solutions than to face the root of the problem, the way you see everything around you. Most people repeat the same patterns with slight variations. They change jobs, move to a new city, start new projects, but the internal feeling remains the same. The frustration returns, the fear returns, the sense of lack returns. And this happens because their gaze is still stuck in the old. The lens through which they interpret reality is still tuned to the past, to what didn't work, to what's missing. Today, you'll understand why true transformation doesn't start with action, but with perception. The way you observe everything, your emotions, your experiences, the people around you, is the starting point of your vibration. And your vibration is what shapes your reality. Nothing changes on the outside until something shifts on the inside. And the first movement is not physical, it's energetic. It's a shift in vision, in choice, in focus. Get ready, because what you're about to discover now has the power to realign everything. Why nothing changes when you keep seeing the same way. Have you ever felt like you're trying your hardest, doing everything you can, but life just doesn't respond? That no matter how much you change your habits, build new routines, or make different decisions, things always seem to end up the same. That feeling is more common than you think, and it stems from an invisible source, the way you're observing reality. The truth is, life doesn't change just because you act differently. It changes when you start seeing differently. The reality you experience isn't made of facts alone. It's shaped by the way you interpret them, how you feel them, how you register them internally. Your observation is the lens through which you perceive everything. And as long as that lens remains attached to the same patterns, the movie you keep watching will stay the same, even if the scenery changes. It's like trying to watch a new ending to an old movie without changing the disc. You can move the couch, adjust the volume, redecorate the room, but if the story playing is the same, nothing really changes. Observation is that disc. It records patterns and plays them back on repeat until you change the content of the recording. As long as you're seeing the same situations with the same gaze, rooted in fear, doubt, and limitation, life will continue to follow the same vibrational script. And this is where many people get lost. They think they're evolving because they're doing things differently, but they don't realize they're still seeing things the same way. Their mind continues to judge in the same way, expecting the same outcomes, with the same level of belief and expectation. And that blocks real energy movement, because what you frequently observe determines what you vibrate, and what you vibrate determines what you attract. It's not what happens outside that shapes your reality. It's how you perceive what happens. When you keep seeing things the same way, you're telling the universe, this is what I want to keep experiencing. Even if consciously you want something else, the vibration you emit is determined by the focus of your attention. And the universe, by its energetic nature, doesn't respond to rational requests. It responds to the frequency you consistently sustain. And what sustains your frequency is exactly this, the focus of your gaze. If you're stuck in scarcity, in the fear of failure, in the idea that nothing is ever enough, your vibration will continue to call in realities that match those patterns. You can change your home, your job, your relationship, seek new spiritual practices, but if your lens remains the same, the results will likely repeat. Because it's not the environment that creates your inner state, it's your inner state that interprets and molds the environment. True change begins when you question your point of view. When you ask yourself, what am I choosing to see every day? That simple question opens a space of freedom, a space where you can reposition your perception and begin observing from a new perspective. Because in the end, it's not about doing more or trying harder. It's about seeing with more awareness. Nothing changes until your gaze changes. And when it does, everything begins to respond. Not magically or instantly, but in harmony with the new vibration you've started to emit. Reality is shaped by the gaze. The external world reorganizes itself according to what you choose to see internally. That is the key to silent yet profound transformation. The hidden role of observation in creating reality. There is a silent force constantly at work in shaping your reality. It doesn't make noise or draw obvious attention, but it influences absolutely everything you experience, feel, and attract. That force is your observation. And what many have yet to realize is that observing isn't just noticing or being aware of something. It's emitting a vibrational command. It's making an energetic request to the universe without saying a single word. Observation directs your energy field. It focuses your vibration. What you constantly observe becomes a center of your frequency. And the universe doesn't respond to what you theoretically desire, but to what you observe with the most intensity and emotion. That's why so many people fail to manifest what they want, no matter how hard they try. Because wanting isn't enough when your gaze is fixed on the opposite. You don't attract what you say you want. You attract what you observe most often, with more feeling, with more involvement. That's the hidden role of observation. It acts as an invisible language between you and the quantum field. When you repeatedly observe something, you're reinforcing its energetic existence, even if you don't consciously want it. And that's how many people end up reinforcing realities they claim to want to avoid. Think of someone who wants peace but spends their day observing conflict, judging others' actions, feeding thoughts of comparison and criticism. That person is not vibrating peace, even if they wish for it. They're vibrating tension, and that's what reality will reflect back. Now think of someone who desires abundance but constantly observes what's missing, what's expensive, what hasn't worked out yet. That person is vibrating lack, and the universe only amplifies what's being emitted. What you observe repeatedly gains density within you. It starts as a thought, turns into emotion, and soon becomes a state of being. And that state is what magnetizes experiences. When you constantly observe the problem, you feed it, you strengthen it energetically. The problem grows, not because it truly worsened, but because your gaze gave it more power than it deserved. On the other hand, when you train your perception to observe the purpose behind the challenges, something begins to shift. You stop looking at the symptoms and start seeing the causes. You stop resisting life and start cooperating with it. Your vibration rises, not because everything is perfect, but because your gaze stopped amplifying what's out of balance and began focusing on what can be built. That is the great role of observation. It organizes your vibration. It filters what enters and leaves your field. It selects within the apparent chaos what you will turn into reality. Because everything exists as potential, but only what you choose to focus on gains power. And more than that, observation is the beginning of the co-creation process. When you focus, you activate. When you sustain that focus, you vibrate. When you vibrate consistently, you manifest. Everything begins in the invisible, and the invisible begins in your gaze. That is the origin point of your reality. And when you become aware of this, you begin to observe with more presence, with more responsibility, with more intention. How the mind creates a cycle of repetitive observation. The human mind is a machine of repetition. It's designed to identify patterns, conserve energy, and keep you within what it considers safe. That's why, when you start observing something frequently, the mind registers it as a pattern to be maintained. And that's where an invisible cycle begins. A cycle in which you observe the same thing every day, vibrate at the same frequency, attract the same experiences, and, without realizing, reinforce the same reality over and over. This cycle is powerful because it happens automatically. Once the mind detects that you're focused on a certain thing, whether positive or negative, it begins to filter the world around you to find more of it. It's a natural survival mechanism that makes you notice what confirms what you already believe or feel. But when this process goes unconscious, it's what traps many people in realities that don't reflect their true desires. Imagine someone who observes lack every day, who wakes up thinking about what's missing, what they can't afford, the fear of losing the little they have. This constant observation forms an internal circuit. The brain interprets that as the primary focus and activates its selective attention system to look for more signs of scarcity. So even when something good happens, that person can't see it because their mind is not programmed to observe abundance, but to maintain the pattern of lack. This cycle feeds itself. The mind sees what it expects to see, and by seeing it, it reinforces the belief. And by reinforcing it, it observes even more. It's like a lens you forget you're wearing, but it distorts everything that passes through it. The problem isn't reality itself, but the filter through which it's being perceived. And the longer that lens is worn, the stronger it becomes. It becomes normal. The vibrational comfort zone. The mind doesn't do this out of malice. It thinks it's protecting you. To the mind, changing your gaze is stepping into the unknown, and the unknown is a risk. That's why even when you want change, even when you say you're ready for a new phase, your mind might sabotage that shift, keeping you locked into what it already knows. And what it knows is what you've observed for a long time. This is the point where the observer must awaken. When you become aware of this cycle, you realize you have the power to interrupt it. You don't have to keep observing the same things just because they've been part of your story. You can choose to see differently. But that choice requires presence. It requires you to question what you're seeing, to ask, is this all there is, or is this just all I've learned to see? Every time you break a cycle of repetitive observation, you create a crack in the old pattern. And through that crack, a new light begins to enter, a new perception, a new vibrational field. And over time, that starts to generate a new reality. But until then, it takes vigilance. The mind will try to pull you back into the old. It will want to confirm the story it's always told. It will seek out the same signs of pain, rejection, limitation. And it's up to you as the conscious observer to choose where to keep your focus. Because that focus will determine whether you keep repeating the past or begin creating a new future. Repetitive observation creates a field of attraction. And only when you interrupt that field can possibilities begin to reorganize. So observe yourself. Observe what you've been observing. Because in the end, the reality you live may not be built on what is true, but on what your mind, out of habit, has learned to focus on. And that can be changed. The cycle continues only until the moment you choose to break it. Change the angle. Change everything. Most people believe that in order to change their lives, they need to change everything around them. Switch jobs, leave a relationship, make more money, start something new. And while external actions can be important, true change almost never starts on the outside. It begins with an internal shift, with the decision to change the way you see what's already in front of you. Because when you change the angle, you change everything. The reality you see is just one version among many. What you interpret as an obstacle may hold the seed of an opportunity. What looks like scarcity may actually be a necessary reorganization for abundance to enter. What you call loss may in fact be making space for something much greater. But to see that, you need to change where you're looking from. And that takes presence. Changing the angle doesn't mean creating a fantasy. It means accessing a new perspective on the facts. It means seeing the same scene with new eyes. When you allow yourself this repositioning, you move out of reactivity and into a space of consciousness. Life stops being something that just happens to you and becomes something you actively collaborate with. And in that state, you begin to notice subtleties that once went unseen. It's like climbing a mountain. When you're at the base, everything seems too big, confusing, closed off. But as you ascend, the landscape begins to open up. The same elements are still there, but now arranged more clearly. You understand the connections. You see what was once hidden. This metaphor applies to the mind. When you shift the level of consciousness from which you observe a situation, you gain access to a new understanding. And with that, a new vibration. Maybe you're going through something that feels blocked, stuck, without a way out. But what if, just for a moment, you took a deep breath and chose to see it under a different light? What if instead of seeing it as punishment, you asked, what is this experience trying to show me? What if instead of focusing on lack, you started recognizing everything that's still standing, everything that supports you, everything that is already a sign of transformation. What would change? That simple choice to change the angle has a direct impact on your energy, because vibration doesn't come from the facts. It comes from how you relate to them. And when you shift from a lens of lack to one of abundance, your frequency changes. When you take your gaze off resistance and place it on acceptance, your field opens. And that lighter, more receptive field begins to attract new possibilities. Many people are so used to observing through the same lens that they don't even realize they're trapped in a repeated narrative. They interpret everything through the story they carry without questioning whether that story still serves them. Changing the angle is like interrupting that automatic script and giving yourself the chance to write a new version. One that's more conscious, more aligned with who you're becoming now. You don't need to wait for everything to change to start seeing differently. The shift in perception is the first step, not the last. And it's precisely that shift that begins to unlock the paths. Because deep down, reality responds to your vibration, and your vibration is a direct extension of your gaze. If you keep seeing everything the same way, you keep emitting the same frequency. But if you change the way you see, you completely shift the field of possibilities around you. How to create a new field of conscious observation. Creating a new reality begins by creating a new field of observation, and this isn't something that happens all at once. It's a daily, ongoing process that involves intention, presence, and practice. The mind, by habit, tends to return to the same focal points. It seeks out what's familiar, even if that familiar is out of alignment with the life you want to live. That's why building a new field of conscious observation means interrupting the automatic rhythm and bringing light to what was once unconscious. The first step in this process is vigilance, observing yourself observing, noticing the thoughts that arise the moment you wake up, the emotions that repeat in certain situations, the silent judgments that run through your day. All of that forms the base of your vibrational field. And the first move toward change is clearly seeing what's being fed into your inner field. When you begin to notice that you're caught in repetitive observation patterns, always seeing what's wrong, what's missing, what didn't go as planned, you've already taken the first step toward transformation. From there, the most important moment arises, the point of choice. That's when you can interrupt the automatic impulse and question what you're observing. And that simple question can open a portal. Is what I'm seeing right now bringing me closer to or further from the reality I want to live? This question isn't just mental. It shifts your vibration. It puts you in touch with your deepest intention. And from there, the possibility of redirection is born. It's not about forcing positive thinking. It's about changing the lens through which you're seeing. It's like slightly turning your face toward the side where there was shadow and suddenly noticing that the light was always there, just waiting to be seen. Over time, you begin to build a new field of observation based on intention, not reactivity. A field where you choose, every day, to focus on what's already working, on the small manifestations, on the signs of alignment. And that new field gradually replaces the old patterns that once ruled your energy without your conscious permission. A powerful practice is to start your day observing everything that's in harmony. It could be the simple fact that you woke up, your body functioning, the water you drink, the morning stillness, the opportunity to start again. When you begin your day with this quality of observation, you tune your field to a more receptive frequency. And this isn't about denying challenges. It's about not letting them dictate the tone of your vibration. As this practice strengthens, you begin to notice subtle changes in how you see the world. Things that used to go unnoticed now catch your attention. You see beauty where there was once urgency. You see order where there was once chaos. You see possibilities where there were once only limits. And this new way of observing begins to generate new responses from reality. Situations unfold differently. People show up with different energies. The flow reorganizes. This new field of observation isn't external. It's built within you, through your conscious choice of where to rest your gaze. And the more you practice, the more it becomes your new natural state, a field that vibrates with trust, presence, gratitude, and openness. And it's precisely that internal state that gives energetic permission for life to present a new version of itself to you. The power to reprogram your gaze and change your destiny. There is a point where spirituality and the science of the mind meet, in the understanding that your destiny is not written in stone, but constantly shaped by the frequency you sustain, and that frequency is born from the way you choose to see life. Your gaze is the beginning of your vibration. It is the starting point of creation, and when you reprogram that gaze, you profoundly shift the course of what is yet to come. Many people live trapped in cycles that seem inescapable, repeating situations, recurring patterns, persistent feelings, and they believe it's destiny, as if something had been decided by forces beyond their control. But what often goes unnoticed is that these repetitions aren't decrees from the universe. They are the result of a lens that has never been changed, a way of observing the world that remains frozen in time, even when life keeps moving forward. True destiny is not what happens to you, but what you do with what happens. And that doing begins long before action. It begins in the subtle realm of perception, in the exact moment you choose to interpret a situation as an ending or a rebirth, as punishment or preparation, as loss or liberation. The lens you use changes the path you walk. And so, reprogramming your gaze is rewriting the journey of your soul. Every time you choose to see with more clarity, with more presence, with more intention, you alter the vibration of your field. The energy changes direction, and with it, the possibilities change as well. What once seemed closed begins to open. What once hurt begins to teach. What once felt like an ending reveals itself as a transition. This is the silent reprogramming your gaze is capable of. A miracle that starts within and reflects outward, without forced effort. To reprogram your gaze is to step out of autopilot and into the territory of choice. It's understanding that you can change your experience of reality without changing the world around you, simply by changing the meaning you give to things. This isn't illusion, it's consciousness. Observation is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. What you choose to see expands. What you recognize as sacred strengthens. What you honor with your gaze flourishes. Your reality changes when your lens changes. That's why so many spiritual paths speak of seeing with the eyes of the heart, with the eyes of the soul. Because there is a place within you that sees beyond appearances. A place not bound by fear, by personal history, or by the past. That place is your higher consciousness, and it is always available when you quiet the noise and choose to observe with truth. When you access this place, you realize that what seemed like a fixed destiny was just unconscious repetition. And now, with a new gaze, you can create a new path, a life with more flow, more purpose, more authenticity. Nothing on the outside needs to change for you to begin this process. All it takes is the decision to see differently, to reposition your attention, to open space for the new within your own perception. That is the silent power of conscious observation. It reprograms your vibration, and through it, redesigns your path. Not because the universe changes, but because you change the way you move within it. You shift from spectator to co-creator, from victim of fate to master of your experience. And that begins not with a grand revolution, but with a simple act of presence, the choice to see with more awareness. We've reached the end of our journey, and perhaps now you can feel it more clearly. Nothing changes until you change what you choose to see. The way you observe your life determines what it gives back to you. External reality is only a reflection of the vibration that begins in your gaze. And every true transformation begins when you decide to see differently. Over the next 24 hours, try a personal experiment. Observe the world, the people, and most importantly, yourself, through a new lens. A lens of presence, of possibility, of purpose. Notice how everything starts to respond in a new way when you shift your focus. Change begins in the invisible, and the invisible begins in your gaze. What you choose to see is what you allow to bloom. Choose with awareness, choose with soul, and life will take care of expanding exactly what you decided to observe with your heart.